Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And this is something I've kind of actually wanted to get off my chest for a little bit of a while now. 2 weeks ago, the Mail on Sunday, on the top of their on the top of their newspaper, they had how ghoulish Netflix were directing Prince Philip's funeral for their hit drama series The Crown on Netflix. And down below, and this was when the lead up to replace Liz Truss was going on, and when Boris Johnson was in contention for a while. Can Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak form any sort of alliance so they can get this country back on course? Now, you're probably wondering why I bother bringing that up, but I just want you guys to bear in mind something, and this is something the Daily Mail or the Mail on Sunday will never tell you, or the Daily Express, but hear me out, okay? What they fail to mention is this. What was Boris Johnson doing on the night of Prince Philip's funeral? In fact, what was our Majesty the Queen doing on the night of her husband's funeral? As far as we know, ladies and gentlemen, in fact, it is wide knowledge that she was the only one who attended her own husband's funeral because of, the enforced COVID restrictions. And Boris Johnson drank and partied with his cohorts into the night. What do you think they were doing, ladies and gentlemen? They were paying homage to Prince Philip's memory? I don't think so. So, it's a small victory, ladies and gentlemen, for me to call the Daily Mail or the Daily Express or any real paper I think is talking bullshit. It's always a small victory for, for what it's worth. But it's still a victory because, ladies and gentlemen, I can see through them. I can see through their bullshit. I know very well that why they don't want to mention too closely about what Johnson was doing on Prince Philip's funeral, because if they did that, it might give you an indication as to the sort of man that Boris Johnson really is. Because remember, it was Johnson. The Mail were very heavily behind Johnson. In fact, really, even when they said Liz Truss, they were backing Liz Truss and not Sunak. I don't think they like Sunak very much. I don't think they ever like his policies, or they don't like something about him. Although, again, it may be a very contentious thing to say, but I think it's only because he's the first Asian British Prime Minister. It might not be the case, but for some reason, I think there is an underlying level of I don't know if it's racial hatred or some form of prejudice, because I think they were gunning for Johnson to come back. But again, it's the overwhelming layer of maliciousness attitudes that are toxic and rife throughout this country. And why do I say that, ladies and gentlemen? Because, remember, if they can get away with it, that's all that matters to them. You tell me, ladies and gentlemen. You think if they didn't think they could get away with it, do you think they would do it? Hancock thought he could get... Hancock still thinks he can get away with it, even though he's competing on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. He's had the whip taken away from him. He's been disgraced by most papers and most members of the press. And a lot of MPs are not very happy with him either. And again, ladies and gentlemen, that's just... For me, ladies and gentlemen... A bad politician is a lot like a bad comedian. It's not because their jokes aren't funny. It's not because their policies are fundamentally flawed. It's not because they have the worst timing and have really zero presence or any form of delivery. It's not only because, it's systematically flawed or anything like that, but it's a lot simpler than that. A bad politician is like a bad comedian because there's one thing they both have in common. Because they think it's easy. They think it's easy to lie, brag, and promise things you will never stand up for. And it's all too easy to think yourself funny just because you entertain a couple of your mates with very childish and absurd humor. And to be honest, again, it's almost as bad as a comedian who has only one type of joke. There's got to be a little bit more to it than that, or you're going to have to step up your game. And unfortunately, great comedians are more than easily able to step up their game. bad politicians and bad comedians do not. Nigel Farage, Amy Schumer, take your pick. Anyway, that's just something I wanted to leave you guys on, and watch this make front page news. let's see the heads roll, shall we?